What's up guys, my name is XANAA, and hi, how's it going? And today, I'm gonna be checking out Need for Speed ProStreet. In the last video, I checked out Need for Speed Carbon, where I found out whether or not it was rather the start of Need for Speed's downfall and decline in form. Well, in this video, I'm gonna find out if it was ProStreet or not, since, well, I actually liked Carbon a relative bit, and this game, well, there's a lot I have to say about this game. So that being said, let's get things started! Ugh, boy, where do I start? So Need for Speed ProStreet is the game that came out after Carbon. I think EA acknowledged how profitable Need for Speed became and decided that, in order to keep that momentum, they had to split Black Box into two teams, so they had more time and less workloads. Less workloads, I said. Yeah, EA CEO at the time was a complete sociopath and gave the devs extreme workloads, abusing them like little Sims characters. The teams being split into two also meant less resources in total. Why they just didn't have a different studio assist Black Box for one of the games, we will never know. But hey, eventually we got there. So because of this, we got Carbon, which by no means is a bad game. It borrowed a lot of groundwork from Most Wanted, they made a different game out of it, and they turned it into a direct sequel to Moise. The game was objectively a step down in terms of gameplay and sales, but you still had a lot of stuff to do, and personally, I still think it's an awesome game. Now in 2007, these bad boys were ready for retirement, and games were getting bigger and more expensive, and we eventually got a bit of info on the next Need for Speed. It was going to feature a brand new physics engine which would allow cars to handle more realistically, as well as cars now taking damage in accidents. The series was once again in a similar position like with Hot Pursuit 2. Back then they rolled the dice and created Underground because of, well, the tuner scene rising, and it was obviously the right move to make. This time though, their inspiration behind making their next Need for Speed game was, we shouldn't really be promoting street racing. But it's a video game. At the time, in real life, the street racing scene was changing because of, well, it is illegal, and because of this, fines were getting heftier and the police started putting a serious stop to it. So instead we get a game that takes Need for Speed away from public roads and instead focusing more on typical track days. Actual organized events for people to push their driving ability without putting others at risk. And it seemed as if the street racing scene was actually heading that way. And so Black Box wanted to risk jumping into that market, hoping it would work out for them like it did with Underground. The year is still 2007, and a few weeks before the game came out, it got released for phones in late October. Yeah. Eventually, November 13th, Need for Speed ProStreet came out in North America, with it coming a few weeks later to the rest of the world. It came out for mobile, PC, Xbox 360, the PlayStation 2, free, and the PlayStation Portable, and then the DS and the Wii. Once again, I consider the 7th gen version to be the best, despite that I've played the inferior versions. They're fine, they work, but why not settle with the best option? In terms of content, the 7th gen version also got DLC. It's no longer available, but for PC releases, there's probably some patch you can download and dump into your game. The game also got a collector's edition, which would upgrade your game and add some more content. But again, it was an add-on, so you could only download it for the time it was available. And then there was a limited edition retail box of the game featuring the game itself, a lanyard, a keychain, a purse, and a clock. But it could only be purchased in Japan. Why they wouldn't release this to a wider audience, such as in Europe or the States, I don't understand. But hey, it's a cool piece of content that exists. Well, I think I've rambled on enough about the backstory of this game, so without further ado, let's start the game. Oh, free goodies, awesome. Oh, never mind. Well, anyway, here we have the main menu. There is the career mode, race day, and quick match, which is online, along with some other settings featuring online functions. It looked like the online features were heavily supported throughout its earlier years though, and it's sad to see it all shut down. As always, let's start the career mode and see where this takes us. Starting off the career mode, we take the role of Ryan Cooper, a newbie when it comes to organized street racing, and we see Ryan going through the prologue of the career. So we enter the qualifying stage of the career mode called the D-Day Qualification Race Day, held in Chicago by the Battle Machines Racing Organization. I guess they're responsible for allowing these race events to happen. And so we see Ryan dominating most of the competition in all of these race events. Then in the final race, we take on the role of Ryan and we get to do this circuit race. Now, as per usual, you would just beat the level and finish, but this would also be the perfect time for me to talk to you about the feel of the game. Oh god, does it feel kinda weird would be my immediate impression of playing this. The game did get a new physics engine, and Black Box worked on tweaking the handling a bit to try and make it more realistic, while still being an arcade racer. It's sort of this awkward blending between being an arcade racer, sim racer, and it does demand you rewiring your brain quite a bit. There's never any autopiloting through this game, I can tell you that for sure. Especially if you played Carbon before getting into this, then yeah, good luck with getting on the brakes. There's a racing line to help you out, but fuck, damn it, I want to figure this stuff out by myself. And just in case when it all goes wrong, you can always restart. But you still have to pay for the damages, obviously. As well as giving this game a brand new physics engine, cars can now take damage. And so that will be another game mechanic you'll be forced to deal with. So in this game there's 3 different tiers of damage your car could be in, at level 1, 2 or 3. Level 1 being you have light damage, level 2 being heavy damage, and level 3 being you've totaled your car. I personally think the way damage is executed in this game is an absolute piss take. Touching anything, barely, gives you light damage, and as far as I'm concerned, performance isn't really even affected by having any damages at all. It's only when you go completely out of your way to damage your car that you'll notice some sort of performance loss. Nonetheless, the way you deal with any damages can be by either paying for them or just using a marker. Buy a shit ton of markers, guys, as soon as the option becomes available. Later on, the expenses get way too steep to keep paying for them, so best be ready by then. And lastly, there's a couple of assists you can tweak, but I would say just keep it on King and you'll be fine. Eventually, after we win, it allows us to progress to the tier 1 stage of the career, allowing us to participate in more events. Ryan makes quite a name for himself, as at some point during the race day, the Showdown King himself, Ryo Watanabe, arrives and is seen entertaining the crowd, flaunting his status as, I guess, being the top dog of his entire racing league.
Check it out. There's Ryan Cooper in that green S13. He's been on fire today. That dude's definitely a battle machine prospect.
Nah, I don't know about this Cooper guy. He never would have cut it back in the day. They must have really lowered the standards this year.
I'm not going to stick up for Cooper. His driving's got to do all the talking.
Cooper takes the win! Put your hands together! Rio, man, come on, that was so sick!
Oh, man. You know, yeah, okay, the guy won, but he did not look pretty behind the wheel. It physically pained me to watch that guy drive, you know what I'm saying? I don't know how he made it.
Well, thanks for helping us out, Rio. It's been real. Whoa, folks, Cooper has crushed today. The dude just totally dominated. Oh, yeah, Cooper's coming up, I'm saying.
As the plot progresses, we see Ryan unlock more and more events as the career progresses, and that's basically it. So this is when I'll take you through a bit of a career mode. We have this career map with all the stuff you can do, and every track day event is hosted by some kind of event sponsor or organizer. So for example, Noisebomb is hosting a bunch of drift events, or this one here is hosting a track day event in the Tokyo Dockyard region. It means all these different races are available to us, but only when you advance into this event. And it is a track day event. It means you have to pass these races on your only visit, and leaving without filling that domination gauge will reset your progress on your next visit. So this gauge you see at the top is your progression meter of the track day. You earn XP from doing races, and the higher you finish, the more XP you earn, but it's not mandatory to win every race in order to progress. And you can always re-enter every race. When you pass the track day event as well as dominate it, you get to choose between one of the 5 markers, and they can contain any kind of reward between a cash bonus or a performance upgrade. Now let's break down what kind of race events there are. To start things off, there are 4 different types of race classes in this game. There's grip races, speed challenge races, drag races, and drift races. Each car in your garage will be set up to a certain race class and will be restricted to joining any other races. The only reason you see me driving a Nissan Skyline on the speed challenge events and not a drag race, for example, is because the class of car restricts me from entering any other types of races with that car. If I wanted to, I would then have to buy a new Nissan Skyline and create my own drag builds for it. But we'll get into the customization later. Back to what I was saying. There are grip races. These are just your typical circuit race taking you around a lap of any track. There's also grip class races, breaking the competition into 2 classes, and again, it's just a race, but you only compete against your class. Then there's sector shootout. The track will be divided into 4 sectors, and the fastest racer across the sector will be awarded the points. Points will be tallied up, and the winner has the most points by the end of the 3rd lap. Then there's time attack. The player with the fastest time on a lap wins, and that's it. Then we have Speed Challenge, and this has you doing a sprint race from A to B like in the past few games. Again, the only difference is that the handling feels a bit tweaked for these events, as these races are designed for you to go fast on. There's also top speed run races, and again, these are the A to B races we had earlier, but with checkpoints splitting up the track. And the goal is to pass the checkpoints with the highest speed. The person with the highest points tally wins, and this time your score doesn't bleed depending on how late you finish. Then returning from Most Wanted, drag races make it back into the game. How do I feel about them in this game? Well, they're a little better, I guess. This time you have to fill up this grip gauge at the start and then balance the acceleration parameter in the green before you start. Then you launch away and flick up the control stick when shifting through the gears as per usual. The only difference is that you also have to manage staying on the track manually instead of the game doing it for you. Then there's also wheelie competition races. They basically have you doing the same thing, but the only thing that matters is how long you keep that wheelie going on for at the start. Now I would say that in general, these drag races can get quite difficult, especially when just finding the right car for the job. I actually went out of my way to practice with a lot of different cars through playing regular race day events, and I ultimately settled for having a Ford Mustang build for the drag races, and a separate GT500 build for the wheelie races, since I couldn't find a car that could settle with both. And you're allowed to pick another drag car as a backup vehicle since, well, you're allowed to pick any car as a backup vehicle. Then lastly, there are drift events. Last time I played them on Wii, I deemed them impossible since I was playing with a Wii remote. However, they just take a ton of practice, and eventually I ended up getting the hang of these. If it seems as if you might be getting nowhere with your drifts, just remember you can also use your handbrakes to initiate a drift. Now we've discussed the types of races and car classes there are, let's carry on with finishing the career mode. Like I said earlier, the career map consists of all these different events you can join, with the career mode being broken down into a few different tiers. You'll be forced to unlock and do a showdown event, and then you'll unlock an extra portion of the career until you make it to the end. Every now and then you'll get a cutscene with one of the kings mocking you for your achievements, but that's really it in terms of any story engagement. Eventually, when you get towards the end, you can start challenging all these different kings at their crowns. Remember guys, you're a king. So again, the top dog of this entire racing league seems to be the showdown king Ryo Watanabe, who throughout the career mode taunts you here and there, but that's about it. He also owns his own crew, Apex Glide, and throughout the game you'll be challenging some of his members, but again, This didn't really leave an impression on me, nor did I really pay that much attention to it. Then there's Aki Kamura, he's the Drift King. Then there's Ray Krieger, he's the Grip King. Then there's Carol Monroe, he's the Drag King. And then lastly there's Nate Denfer, and he's the Speed King. I thought I was the Speed King. Again, these bosses, or kings, as you will, require the player to beat a bunch of challenges in order to get an invite to the boss event. Then you'll proceed on with the events, and defeating all 5 kings will crown Ryan Cooper as the Street King, the master of all racing disciplines, and there you have it, that's the career mode. So yeah, that was the career mode. I think it's just fine. I wasn't really expecting a massive story for a track day type of game. And with that being said, let's move on to the customization. So earlier I talked a little bit regarding how customization is implemented. Well, you can go to your garage anytime you have access to the minimap. And also anytime you have a screen available, you can either buy cars or just go to your garage. Just for the sake of showing you the car lot, this is what it looks like, and I will say the car roster is a great improvement. Stuff like the Zonda or Corolla are now fully playable in the vanilla base game rather than only being playable as Carbon DLC. It's a Need for Speed trend even the modern games still follow by. I think the models look decent, and it's nice seeing the Integra return from Need for Speed Underground. One more thing, as earlier I talked about car classes being restricted to their respective events. Well, I have nothing new to say here. Again, you'll buy a car and it will need to be restricted to just one class, but cars are also ranked into tiers as you see on the screen. And you'll have to progress throughout the career to unlock everything. But as soon as you buy a car, you can upgrade it to a tier 3 car, so yeah. Anyway, the customization is what you're here for, and earlier I already mentioned how there's 4 different car classes. Any car you have that's pre-tuned cannot be customized, but you can still customize your own blueprint for that car like I've done to the Civic. Let's start off with tuning the performance as we have the most options for it. There's quick upgrade and custom upgrade that will allow us to upgrade our vehicle. Either method works fine, but throughout playing the career mode, there will again be these markers you can choose from like in Moise and Carbon. And there might be a chance you'll unlock a level 4 performance upgrade for whichever car you're using. Upgrading your cars caps the player at level 3 upgrades, so be sure to equip the level 4 stuff as soon as you unlock them. The visual customization on the other hand has taken a few steps back compared to Carbon. Features and settings being completely removed, limiting the player more. I mean, I get it, we want to move away from the street racing illegal stuff, but still, you're removing features that people love these games for. Removing basically a third of Need for Speed Carbon's visual tuning, such as all the aftermarket, and now only allowing to auto-sculpt a small ton of it. Well, what was the reason for it? You couldn't have just ported all of it over? I just want to know the truth. I must find the truth. Does anyone know the truth here? Do you know the truth about Need for Speed ProStreet? I got a bit sidetracked. An Irishman named Kyle told me to go that way. Where the hell am I? Anyway, the customization is more limited in terms of applying rims, finals, the ride height, and some other minor areas. And I know that won't be a massive problem for some people, but to me, it's never a massive plus when it comes to removing legitimately great features. And with that, we've basically already talked about everything the game has, at least in terms of single-player content. Obviously, I never knew what the online scene of this game was. Was it active? Did people genuinely care and like the challenge of this game? Did this game have a pretty active community when it came out? It seems as if you could share car wraps indicating by the leaderboards. You get the idea, the game was pretty supported heavily in terms of online content. But there's obviously one thing I haven't gone over. A little bit of extra DLC content, bonus content that this game got. As Need for Speed ProStreet followed after Carbon, this meant that it also got DLC. When you start the game, there's this booster pack you could have downloaded, there's 2 additional car bundles featuring cars already previously playable in past Need for Speed games. And then there was also the collector's edition, including a couple of extra cars and extra stages. Obviously all of it is gone now, but if you're on PC, then you can go to Reddit and download a patch to update your game. There's also a couple of car mods that restore the DLC to its full glory, as well as people just making whatever they want. And then lastly, to keep things brief, someone made a meme mod for this game called the Pepega Mod. God damn. That's a lot of stuff. As always, please be sure to check out all of this stuff in the description, as well as checking out just any mods for these games. There's a lot of cool stuff out there when it comes to the world of Need for Speed modding, and the effort and talent shouldn't ever go unnoticed. Right! Time to go over my overall thoughts and feelings surrounding this game. Let's start off with some basics and some positives. I do respect and like what they were trying to go for with this game. The problem isn't the idea behind the game, but rather the execution of it. At face value, it's not as if the game lacks polish or sees you going through many glitches, but it should have really just been made by another team with more time and resources, with Black Box focusing on only the undercover project. If need be, you could have always sent some people over from Black Box to monitor whatever the other studio would be doing with the game. Eventually it came to doing this, but they should have really already done it as soon as these games were getting bigger. Instead, we got two games that are both sort of overly repetitive and not really that inspiring or fun even. And that is also something I don't really know how to explain, but to give you a better perspective, I remember being a kid playing this game on my DS, maybe for about an hour or so. And I had also played Undercover on DS, and I must have had some sort of issue with my ProStreet cartridge, but the game never really left an immediate impression anyway. As I got older, my dad also got me a Wii, and I also picked up these games. And ProStreet couldn't really even match the lunacy I really loved about Undercover on Wii. So again, I just didn't really think much of the game. I remember my dad enjoying ProStreet, and going back into this game to play it for a full review was exciting, but I'd say only the first few hours of the game really kept me interested. From then on out, I would just play this whenever, until, well, we're here and the video is finally finished and uploaded, but I never brute forced my way through playing this game as I did with the past games, as ProStreet just wasn't really that addictive or interesting. The gameplay I'm already mixed on, as I do like the racing, I just don't really love playing it that much. The racing at its best is quite satisfying, but the overall physics and feel of the game, it's just not for me. Especially the speed challenges I was completely fed up with by the end of the game. I mean, dying once and restarting, it's like, whatever, right? But every time it happens, you have to just sit there and just wait. Every single time. And it takes forever. And there's no skipping. You have to just sit there and watch as your car totals. Every time. And then you'll get another bunch of prompts on your screen, and it's so slow. Then you'll get a loading screen, and it's just, I just want to restart. And it's the same for drag racing. If you get a bad getaway, then you can either complete your run, which takes time, or restart, which also takes time. The damage model isn't necessarily the problem, as Need for Speed games in the past and present have also had this, but it's a mechanic I find poorly executed and annoying to micromanage. For instance, did you like how archaic the controls used to be? Well, now it has to be this awkward simcade racer. Did you like how Need for Speed used to be about speeding with exotic vehicles, crashing into other racers and obliterating cop cars? Well, there's none of that now, and the game doesn't encourage it. And the tuning, well, only a third of it is really ported over from Carbon, either due to time constraints or it's just a ProStreet thing. It all just sort of gets to a boiling point. But I will say that I like the car models and that they look great. Graphically the game looks fine, nothing really offensive. It could have used a bit of flair in many cases, but I think that's more so down to the overall world structuring. The tracks featured in the game are also just fine. They're inoffensive. I forget which ones are which most of the time, but I like the Autobahn Ring, I don't mind the Tokyo Dockyard, and I recognized Willow Spring from playing Gran Turismo. The sounds are pretty alright, along with the music. Admittedly, there's not a lot I really remember of the music, other than a few tunes. Most of it is just electronic music, with a bit of butt rock sprinkled in between. It's again not really as in your face as per se, but from what I have listened to it, it is a decent soundtrack. The AI opponents, I don't know where to start. There's no consistency, their awareness isn't really that great, the rubber banding is all over the place, especially in the late game. Pretty often I'd be winning races by a 30-second margin, I'd start in last, overtake most of them on the outside into turn 1 and then never look back. But towards the end of the game, the AI just get tough as shit to the point it barely makes sense. How can I be struggling in a Pagani against these car classes? In certain instances, you can argue about the slipstreaming being ridiculously strong, but it's mostly the sector races and time attacks where I noticed it the most. There's no way an Audi TT should have set a faster sector time than me in my Pagani. And it's not as if I'm slower than them by much. Usually I'm miles ahead of a target time, but they're just right behind me, I guess. And obviously there's the online I completely missed out on. It seems as if the online must have been actively promoted as much as possible, since tons of online features are promoted everywhere. It kept receiving support for DLC, and there's a lack of content outside from the career mode. I'd imagine its player base peaked when it came out, and people would then try the online, but after a few months, I can easily imagine people moving on from this. It's not per se I want to keep bashing on this game, but if it were out to come tomorrow, I highly doubt that many people would still be playing it after the first few weeks. But wanna know what solution I have for miraculously everything in this entire game? To me, and when I say this, to me, there's a game like ProStreet, which succeeds what I think ProStreet was trying to go for, and that game is Race Driver Grid. This is a game made a year later by Codemasters. As a matter of fact, I also played this on my DS as a kid alongside the Need for Speed games. But this was never released on Wii, so instead when I moved over to Xbox, quite a few years down the line, I recognized the game immediately, and oh my god did I play it until I did everything. Without making an entire review about it within this review, it goes for the same closed environment simcade style of racing, and again, to me personally, everything that I was missing from ProStreet I found in Grid. It's not perfect, obviously, no such game exists, but I love the atmosphere, it plays fantastically, it has a better track selection with many more recognizable tracks. The car selection is awesome, also featuring tons of cars we see in actual sports, as well as just a lot of niche picks. And it also has a damage model. It's split into 5 separate components: the gears, the suspension, the steering, the engine blocks, and the wheels, and it's not ridiculously sensitive when taking collisions. You could argue it isn't really fair for me to compare ProStreet to one of my all-time favorite racers, but I've played at least a racing game from any of these game franchises you see on the screen. I'm not unfamiliar when it comes to racing games, but at the very least, I'm happy I can say I've finally beaten ProStreet. Alright, well, thoughts, feelings, emotions. Well, Need for Speed ProStreet is a difficult one. It's a game that I, funnily enough, have been playing for a long ass time while also not really even playing it for a long ass time. It's one that I've always just sort of picked up here and there and then just sort of left. And this was my first proper playthrough that I did for this game. And unfortunately, I just didn't really like it that much. Unfortunately, I've given you my opinions about it throughout this entire video, but overall, what would I say about this game? It's hard to recommend. Only the most hardcore of Need for Speed fans, I'd imagine, would have picked this up and played it. But it's not something I would probably ever go back to and, say, do another video like this in 5 years' time. So, with that, one more question left to be answered. Is this the start of Need for Speed's decline in form? Oh yeah, well, most definitely I would immediately think, sort of. Maybe Carbon was sort of the the hint towards it that we never really found out until we got this game. But I really liked Carbon and enjoyed it. And this game, on the other hand, well, there's some of it I like, but a lot of it that I really can't stand. And that's unfortunate, because I wish I could love this game, but I simply cannot. But even though I have this game, I luckily enough have another game I really like. So, yeah, that's gonna be it. Thank y'all for watching. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, share the video with a friend if you thought this was funny, interesting, informative. So yeah, thank you for watching, and peace out! Do you know the truth about Speed ProStreet?